movie in the 60s where the hogs grew up and imitated the people?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I thought you were going to Florida.
I am this afternoon.
Oh, this afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison. Everybody know what the season is?
Coming on, isn't it?
The 1st of March.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. This is the year without a winter, is what I'm calling it.
That's all it is.
And I went to, I don't know if you're aware, we had a farm forum at National Trail. That's a meeting of all the agriculturally interested people and our legislators that supply that. So Davidson was there, he's our representative, and Rodney Creech, which is, if you're from Trumbull County, he's our state rep over there. And they had the agricultural department, the head of the agricultural department from Ohio was there, and they had the chairman of the agriculture committee in Washington, D.C. So he was a Republican who's the head of the committee. So we had 4 speakers there, plus the Farm Bureau head. And I don't have to tell you what it was like. It was like congratulations to us for what a great job we're doing and what a terrible job the opposition, which is the Democrats, are doing. And then talking about how the goal is to cut taxes and strangle government in the bathtub, that Reagan thing. And then they went on to talk about crop subsidies, crop insurance, all the things that government does for farmers. So, and I just kept my mouth shut. I mean, I was way outnumbered. So they had a great breakfast at National Trail, interesting speakers, and I think I'm finally motivated to write a letter to the paper, because I'm going to write down all the little hypocrisies that went through there, because I tried to keep notes on everything. So we'll see if we can do that.
Don't we usually cut taxes but pay more?
Yeah, well, we cut taxes for the rich people, but if you notice, the middle class and the poor people, because what they do is they don't really cut taxes, they just shift taxes.
Yeah.
Lots of states now are going to a sales tax instead of an income tax. So if you're rich, your taxes are cut, but for people that have to buy baby food and regular food, everything that they earn, they spend, they get those sales taxes go up. If you go and buy your sailboat or your yacht or whatever in Europe, you don't pay any taxes on that.
Yeah.
So it's an angle they've got figured out, and they just keep doing it, and people keep buying into it. So I tried to explain it to the people in Dark County, and I'm not making any headway. So.
Yeah.
But I'm not giving up. All right. Announcements. The 4th week of March, we're doing the movie thing here. We still haven't figured out exactly how, but we'll have food and we'll have the Holocaust series one way or another. And because it'll be right after church, anybody that comes can stay. If you don't want to come to church, you can come afterwards for the food and for the movies, and then a discussion as we go along.
When did you say it is?
The last weekend in March. Dolly's gone to Maine, and she really wanted to see it, so we scheduled it so Dolly could. And if somebody else has a problem, our schedule is completely flexible, and we don't have enough people coming anyway. So if you say you'll be here on a certain Sunday, we'll make it that Sunday to help you out.
That'd be the 26th of March.
I haven't looked at the date, but I think it'll be the 26th. Yeah, Mike, you have something? We're going to have the combination with El Dorado on.
Yes, we're going to have on Palm Sunday. I think that's March 9.
April 9th.
April 9th.
April 9.
April 9.
April 9. And
because I don't have any food next week.
I thought we would probably, as we did last year, if it's acceptable to everyone, we'll clean the church the week before and set up everything Saturday, April 2nd. And so therefore we can get it all ready, cleaned up, everything set up. We'll put a sign-up sheet here one of these days soon, but otherwise I think we'll pretty much do it as we've done it last year, if that's acceptable to everyone.
Yeah, we're going to bring the tables upstairs since we don't have an elevator,
yes,
which is not a problem.
Palm Sunday is the 2nd.
It's the 2nd, April 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, I thought it was the 9th or whatever.
That's Easter.
Okay.
That's Easter? Okay, so we want to back it up then. So maybe we can.
I have some notes I
Well, actually, if the last Sunday in March we have the party here, we'll just clean up after the
I was
party.
gonna say, we could probably set up then.
We can set up,
26th.
actually, we can set up while we're here for the
Yeah.
party, and we can clean up after the party.
Okay.
Clean up the pizza crumbs and whatever, and it should work out, so.
So April 2nd then will be Palm Sunday, and that will be hosting Colorado. So the week before that then, when a movie party after that, we'll set up the church and do some cleaning.
Okay,
Thank you, Paul.
Next Sunday's time change Sunday.
next Sunday's time change, okay? You can come early, late, we don't care. We'll be here. Okay, anything else?
Paul, I appreciate the nice get well card.
Oh,
Very,
yeah.
very thoughtful, appreciate it. You do not want to be where we were.
We want to remind, like we do every week, if you're out in the crowd, wear a mask, because Dark County and is notorious for not getting vaccinated. And some people say it's just like having a cold, and Paula and Chaz can tell you it's worse than a cold, and it lasts a lot longer than a cold. And if you're one of the unlucky ones who gets long COVID, some of those people have gone years and have not gotten rid of all the symptoms. And that's something you really do not want to have to suffer through. So the best thing is not to get it in the first place.
I believe the vaccination rate, current, I believe is 36% in Dark County.
And the mask wearing rate is practically zero.
Yes.
I mean, I'm practically, me and I'm assuming a few people, older people who are sick, I see wearing masks, but I'm the only person who's actually able to walk around without a cane that I see wears a mask, like at Kroger's or Tractor Supply or whatever. All right, our prelude is Laura. Hymns are nice, but personally show tunes are better. The piano is capable of so much more. All right, our chalice lighting is Across the Distance by Laura Thompson. Across the distance, the light from within me shines, sending love to all. Across the distance, your light is the fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Together, we keep the flame of community burning bright. Today, you can see by our first slide, Roberta is basically bringing the letters that Jeff has written her from Berlin. He's been assigned again, out of retirement again. Has been assigned to Germany, has been in Berlin for the last couple months, I guess.
All of February.
All of February. And as you probably gathered from my talking in the past, Germany is close to me, and particularly Berlin. I lived for a year in Berlin, kind of in the middle of everything, and I'll give you a little bit of history on that. So, Brandenburg Gate, That's the symbol of Berlin, kind of like the Champs-Élysées in France and the Arc de Triomphe. This is Berlin's answer to that. So we're going to have some slides of Berlin. We're going to have a children's story from Berlin. And I'll talk a little bit about my experience in Berlin, which I think I've told you about before. Our opening hymn is 44, We Sing a Golden Morning. If you can see the picture that I brought, that's a watercolor. The artist is a person called, was a person called Wolfgang Stürmer. When I was a kid, my parents, my great-grandparents came from Germany in a town called Hornbach, believe it or not. They came to Canada, and then my grandparents emigrated down from Canada to Michigan, and my father came from Michigan down to Indiana. While there, this was in the 50s and 60s, they sponsored a East German refugee. Wolf and his wife Barbara escaped from East Germany, not from the Berlin Wall, but there was a fence and a wall clear across East Germany, separating East Germany from West Germany, and it was a little bit easier if you were in East Germany to ram a car through it or go through the forest and escape the Stasi guards. So they sponsored them. They came to Auburn, Indiana, where we lived, and we got them a house. Wolf was a horse trainer, which is one of the reasons he and my father got along so well. My father was pretty interested in horses. I think I told you that. The harness racing started with him. And he was also an amateur artist, and I think he was a pretty good one. So this is one of the things I saved from there. He unfortunately got liver cancer and died almost 6 years after he came to America, but his wife Barbara is still here, still alive, is remarried and living in Pleasant Lake, Indiana. And I talk to her very rarely, but occasionally. And I guess I'll tell you a little story. Her parents lived in East Berlin. So when I lived in East Berlin, Westerners could travel back and forth. The East Berliners could not get into West Berlin, but West Berliners could go to East Berlin. They would charge you 5 marks as tourist visa, and it was a money-making thing. And it's traditional in German, when you do German visitation, you always take coffee, chocolate, and flowers. So her parents were older and retired. I gathered up, went to KaDeWe, which is the department store on Kurfürstendamm, and bought some chocolate and bought some flowers and some fancy ground coffee for them. And took the S-Bahn, which is the S-Bahn is the surface railroad. It's not really a trolley, but it's an actual railroad that runs above the ground. The U-Bahn is the underground, is the subway. Took the S-Bahn over to East Germany, Went to their apartment and knocked on the door because they didn't know I was coming, explained who I was, that I knew their daughter, and gave them the little gifts and sat and talked to them a little bit. I have basic German, but nothing conversational, so we talked for a little bit, and then went back and then talked to Barbara. I guess it was about a month or two later, and she thanked me for visiting her parents and then told me that because her parents are retired and older, the East Germans didn't care if they escaped from East Germany because they're just a burden on the society. The East German government has to pay their Social Security, so they almost encourage them to go live in West Berlin. But the East German government, everything is subsidized. The food is subsidized, healthcare is subsidized, your apartment is subsidized. So they couldn't exist in West Berlin on what their pension was, whereas they could live decently in East Berlin. But they were allowed to go to West Berlin anytime they wanted to buy coffee, to buy chocolate, and to buy flowers. So my little gift was more of a gift of honoring them as opposed to something that they really needed. But she was still really appreciative that I'd made the effort to go visit her parents. So it's an interesting little story. And while I was there walking down the street, some people asked me directions. They spoke really broken German. They were from Poland. And when they found out I was an American, they pushed me aside and stood around me. They were being shepherded by a Russian interpreter, and they did not want the Russian to know that they were talking to an American. Just one of those little interesting things that life teaches you lessons as you go along. Okay, affirmation. This is a long one. Choose to bless the world by Rebecca Ann Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. Choose to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that what is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, endeavor shared, heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, and the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. All right. I couldn't find my pictures of Berlin, but this is one that's similar. This is an U-Bahn station, an underground, a subway station in Spandau. That's another little story. I worked for the British Air Force. I avoided service in the American military, but I did serve with the British Air Force. I worked as an interpreter for basically the PX. I would ride in the truck with the German employees. We would go into Spandau to the distribution point, pick up the food that goes back to the PX, and then take it back to the PX and shelve it and do all that stuff. I worked at Flugplatz Gatow. That was a Nazi German air base during World War II. Hundreds of corridors underground. I got to know the commandant of the base. And that's kind of a funny story. When I went over as a cowboy with a blue jean jacket, blue jeans, cowboy hat, cowboy boots. I found out that's kind of not a really good way to walk around Europe. So I adopted the European clothes, which is like button-up sweaters and corduroy pants and regular shoes. So I had these clothes left over, and for the English and the Germans to have American Levi's is kind of a real status thing, which I didn't realize at the time. So I traded my Levi jacket to the commandant of the base, who was a younger guy, for a pair of shoes, a pair of really nice British RAF good shoes. And I could see him walking around the base strutting like a peacock, wearing regular pants, because he was taller than I was, so my pants wouldn't fit, but wearing my blue jean jacket, which looked completely ridiculous to me, but he was just as proud as a peacock. So anyway, I got to tour some of the underground tunnels and things like that. They were very nice to me. But Spandau their underground station is done in Art Deco style in the 30s, and it was not destroyed during the war. So if you want to come up and look at the picture later, it's a pretty incredible picture of what Art Deco can be in Germany in the 30s. Spandau is also the home of Spandau Prison. I don't know if you're familiar with Rudolf Hess, was a German war criminal, the only war criminal left at the end in the 60s and the early 70s when I was there. He was the only prisoner in that entire prison. And when he died, this is Spandau Prison. They eventually tore it down so it wouldn't become a place of honor for the Nazis. The remaining Nazis couldn't come and lay flowers, and just like Hitler's grave is all covered over like a parking lot, nobody really knows where Hitler's bunker was, where he committed suicide and where his body was burned, to prevent any kind of loyalty following through. Okay, so the children's story.
This border cuts Germany in two, separates East and West, communism and democracy, repression and freedom. Its sole purpose, to keep the people of communist East Germany from fleeing to freedom in the Federal Republic of Germany, the West. Berlin has special status. In the middle of East Germany, the city is divided into 4 sectors at the end of World War II. In 1961, the western sectors are surrounded by a fortified border, 155 kilometers long, the Wall. East Berlin in the early 80s. This street leads to West Berlin. Anyone entering this restricted security zone requires special permits, even visitors of the cemetery seen here on the left. It's been closed off since the wall was built. This is where the barriers marking the border begin. Going further means risking life and limb. Behind what is known as the inner wall is a place an average East German citizen may never enter. A heavily guarded strip of borderland. This is what it looks like at the start of the 1980s. The fortifications are continually reinforced and expanded. The area along the restricted zone is patrolled not only by soldiers, but also by the East German police and other watchful agents. Preventing people from fleeing communist East Germany is an elaborate and expensive operation. Two soldiers guard a 200-meter stretch of border here. In total, there are 12,000 border troops posted in Berlin. The next obstacle is a signal fence. Touch it, and a silent alarm goes off. Soldiers in the watchtowers can immediately see where the alarm has been triggered. The would-be escapee doesn't know it, but the guards are already aware of what is happening and where. The guards in the tower can alert other troops along the border and direct their operations. At night, the no man's land around the border is lit up bright as day. In the west, this area is known as the Death Strip, a place where East German border guards will shoot to kill as a last resort to prevent an escape. The Berlin Wall claims 136 lives. The Church of Reconciliation is surrounded by the Death Strip. The wall separates the church from its parish, most of which lies in the west. In 1985, the East German regime demolishes the church. One possible reason is that it obstructs the guards' view of the border. Tank traps prevent escapees from breaking through, but also the guards. On the other side, a carpet of steel spikes 14 centimeters long seriously wounds anyone who steps on it. East German border guards call it asparagus board. Westerners nickname it Stalinrasen or Stalin's lawn. The ground is smoothed regularly so that anyone trying to flee across it will leave a mark. And finally, the notorious Berlin Wall, 3 meters 60 tall, the last insurmountable barrier. The side of the wall facing West Berlin is still part of East Germany. Openings used by the guards to inspect the other side need 2 separate keys to unlock. One person alone cannot open them. At strategic intersections, the East German regime leaves weak points in the reinforced concrete barrier, so its tanks can break through to the west in the event of a war. Nearly everyone in the world is familiar with this view of the wall, looking from the west. Initially, observation platforms are built for West Berlin's police, later for tourists. This view at Bernauer Strasse shows that the sophisticated containment system in Berlin is far more than a wall. Berlin is a special case. West Berlin, effectively part of the Federal Republic of Germany, is located in the middle of East Germany. The border separating East and West Germany is 1,378 kilometers long. Hertensleben is an East German village. The people here live in immediate proximity to the border fortifications. But most East Germans never get as far as Hertensleben. Sentries stop anyone without a permit about 5 kilometers away from the border. Right on the frontier in Hertensleben itself, the residents are confronted constantly with the threat of forced resettlement to places deeper inside East Germany. In the 1950s and 60s, those deemed to have a high potential to flee had already been resettled as part of what the East German regime called Operation Vermin. Before Germany was divided, this street simply ran a straight course. Now a concrete barrier cuts across it, blocking any view to the west, the first major obstacle of the fortified border. The no man's land here is just 40 meters wide, one of the narrowest points along the frontier between East and West Germany. Just 5 meters behind the wall is a deeply anchored alarm fence. Openings have been left in its foundation for the many rabbits living in no man's land to prevent them from triggering the alarm. Six soldiers stand guard in the watchtowers around the clock. 2 are at the top. The other 4 are posted in quarters below. In some places, guard dogs are added to the patrol of the area. A tripwire serves as a further alarm. When a person runs into it, a yellow flare is triggered. The death strip is lit up brightly at night. Live ammunition is fired at anyone trying to flee. Until 1983, landmines along the inner German border are another lethal danger. Past those, another tripwire. When triggered, it fires a red flare to let the border guards know precisely how far an escape attempt has progressed. Along the patrol route for military vehicles is another area of smooth, bare soil. Every footprint can be seen clearly. Tank traps block all vehicles here as well. Concrete barriers are put up only in areas believed to be especially vulnerable. Most places along the inner German border are marked by a fence, 3 meters tall. There are gates where the fence meets the wall. The first few meters on the other side of the barriers are part of East Germany. Only the most reliable soldiers patrol there. Just 100 meters away, automatic firing devices shoot at anyone who hits the tripwire. Some 60,000 of these weapons are in use until 1983. Hundreds of people are killed trying to flee East Germany. The communist regime has made prisoners of its people. They are walled in.
All right, one of the reasons that's so impactful for me is you saw the little observation tower. Those are all over West Berlin. I lived in the area of West Berlin called Kreuzberg, which is the older section, which is obviously where the cheaper apartments were, which is where I was living. These are really old apartments. None of the apartments had bathrooms. They were all walk-up, like 3 and 4 stories, sometimes 5-story walk-ups. And as you went up a flight of stairs and then came to a landing and went up another flight of stairs to the next floor, in that middle landing, that's where the bathroom was. And the bathroom was basically a toilet that everybody on that landing or everybody on that floor used. So that could be any number of people took their turns using the bathroom. People have been known to urinate and dump it down the sink. And that actually, kind of curiously, when I lived in Sweden, I also lived in a cheap place in Sweden, and they had outhouses. You had to actually go down 3 flights to the outhouse, and people there used the sink as well. So it made it kind of interesting when you're cooking dinner. The observation towers, I lived 2 blocks from the wall. Occasionally at night, we would hear gunshots and explosions. Read the paper on the way to work, on riding the bus and the subway to the Air Force Base the next day. I would read in the Der Tagesspiegel, which is the German daily newspaper, the names of the people who were killed at that wall.
Tim, when was this filmed?
This was in late 80s. I lived there in the early 70s, 71. This was done, he talked about 83 when they stopped a lot of this, and then the wall was taken down in, I think it was 89. So, but it was up there for 20 years. And it started out as just a fence, and then the longer they went, the thicker it got and the more defensive they got. And the wall was not just in Berlin, as he mentioned in the end, the entire division between East Germany and West Germany had a fence, it had tank traps, it had strips of mines, it had automatic guns, and any place they were worried about it, they actually built another wall, but they did not have a wall the entire length of Germany. And I've got another film I'll show you at the end if we have time, the ways people used to escape. So, okay, the message. Roberta's lessons or letters from Berlin. And this is during the world, this is from the East German side. You can see the soldiers standing on the wall and the East German citizens here.
Okay, this is all from Jeff when he was posted to Germany. The letters are February. He was over there the month of February. And if I can read his writing, it's not easy. Okay, the purpose of the academy where he was posted is to promote German and American ties. So he was speaking at this academy, and he spent a month there. This letter is more personal than anything that we'll talk about that Tim covered or anything, but it is from Jeff, and knowing him, I hope you get a kick out of it. It's been a long time since I've written a letter, so I hope my handwriting is legible. Hardly, I know that. I got to Berlin as scheduled on Friday, February 3rd. I'm well settled in with a nice one-bedroom apartment with a great view over Lake, I think it's Wawa Sea. When I pronounce German words or lakes, you probably know better.
It's actually Wannsee. That's close, though.
He spells it with a W.
Yes, it is. It's spelled with a W, but Germans pronounce W's with a V, so it's Bauway instead of BW.
Okay, I kept going to say Wawa Sea. Okay, this is a Berlin suburb where he is posted. It's a Berlin suburb dating from the late 19th century with beautiful old lakeside villas. During the years that Berlin was divided, the area was part of the American sector of West Berlin. The house that is now the headquarters of the American Academy has been seized from its Jewish owners who had escaped to the United States. Then it was used by American troops after the war for recreational purposes, sort of an officers' club. The heirs of the family who had owned the house before the war eventually bequeathed it to the American Academy of Berlin, and here I am. So he's at the American Academy of Berlin when he was writing all these letters. We've had all sorts of weather in the few days I've arrived. Rain, hail, wind, and snow. Fortunately, most of Saturday and Sunday had clear weather, giving me a chance to explore. There's a metro stop near the Academy, and I have a month-long public transportation pass. So it's fairly easy to get to the center of Berlin. I saw a good exhibit on Saturday of Hungarian art from 1900 and World War II. Fun to see names of artists and places I remember from when I was living in Budapest. The Academy provides breakfast on Monday through Fridays, as well as lunch on Wednesday and Fridays, and dinners on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Otherwise, we are on our own. I have a small kitchen in the apartment and have stocked up on a few things from my nearby grocery store. Last night, I met two friends who happened to be here at a good restaurant downtown. Tonight, I'll eat with the Fellows. There again, that's capital T-H-E, Fellows, capital F. Tonight, I'll eat with the Fellows who are here, about 15 Americans in all, and they are at the Academy. And the reason Jeff is at the Academy, he's an American who is there to be speaking to these people, and the other people there are from everywhere. The Fellows are here for 6 months, where I am only here for February. An interesting bunch, at least the ones I've met. There are a couple of novelists, a musical composer, some historians, a scientist, etc. They are all here doing some kind of research. I don't know if you remember meeting Andrew Gilmore, my British-Scottish friend, when you and Dad came to my office at the UN. Mary is Jeff's wife, you probably all knew that. Mary and I have been friends with Andrew and his wife, Emma, ever since we were all in Jerusalem at the same time, around the years 2000, 2003. Now he mentions Lisa, my daughter Lisa. Lisa will remember Andrew as the head of, she called them the Tall family. She met 1 year at the Joyce Theater in New York when Ian, my grandson Ian, who is a performer in New York City, she was there when Ian was still with the David Carson's dance group. Anyway, Andrew and Emma now live in Berlin, and I will see them on Wednesday when we meet up to attend a Chopin concert at the Berlin Philharmonic. Well, time for me to brave the cold, but not sunny. His writing is really bad. Well, time for me to brave the cold, but sunny weather today to get to a meeting at the German Foreign Ministry. Pope Hall is well in Greenville, Ohio. And it is. Okay, second letter, February 13th. So I had a nice relaxing weekend. Yesterday afternoon, I went to the Philharmonic again with my friend Andrew and Emma Gilmore, whom I had mentioned in my last letter. They were in Jerusalem with us and then at the UN. When you and Dad met Andrew, when you came to my office at the UN. The music included Beethoven, 20th century Hungarian composers, and a 20th century Polish composer. The last Tuesday, I don't know what he's saying here. Something about anyway, I can't always read his writing. But the concert was nonetheless a great performance. The orchestra conductor was a young-looking woman, which is still unusual in a male-dominated field. I found that interesting. Afterward, Andrew and Emma invited me to their apartment for dinner. They live in a lovely, elegant 19th century building in the heart of what had been East Berlin. I don't know their building survived, I don't know how their building survived the travails of the last century in Berlin. Do you remember my German friend from Fletcher? That's, Jeff went to school in Fletcher. And he wonders if I remember his friend Reinhold Rolf. Well, yes. Reinhardt came with Jeff to Greenville. Jeff says once, but Reinhardt was there twice. And Lisa and I went to Reinhoff's family home for Christmas in 1982, I believe. Anyway, Reinhardt has a close friend, Claus, who was interning in Toronto while we were in school at Fletcher. Claus visited us in Boston a few times, and Claus, unlike Reinhardt, has kept in touch over the years. Claus was in Berlin on Saturday. This is the day that he was writing the letter. And Claus was in Berlin on Saturday, so I had dinner with him. The first time I have seen him in 35 years, we figured. He is still friends with Reinhard Rolf, who has 3 girls, the youngest of whom is 22. Now, Reinhard Rolf was in school with Jeff in, wherever he went to school. This week, This week I will continue to have meetings, do some reading, writing, etc. I've already been here 10 days. I like the other people at the Academy very much. Don Benjamin, who leads the Academy, and I had dinner together on Friday night. Don and I were State Department colleagues when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Don says that in his tenure as president of this Academy that he has talked about, there are the most collegial group of fellows, with a capital F. Everyone gets along without any academic type jealousies or drama. What's new at home? Lisa told me by text that she got tickets for the exhibit in Amsterdam of the Dutch painter Vermeer. Yes, Lisa's going to be visiting Amsterdam. The exhibit has received great reviews. I forget when Lisa is going to the Netherlands, but I will be there for a few days in May for a meeting, so I got tickets for the Fair exhibit too. Vermeer, how do you pronounce it? Is it Vermeer?
Vermeer, yes.
With his writing, it makes it harder. I'm sure you've seen in the news the images from the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Just heartbreaking. I spoke with a friend who works on human foreign relief efforts for the UN. He was in Turkey in the area devastated by the earthquake, and he told me that he expected the death toll would exceed 100,000 once all the ruble was searched. And it's probably over 100,000 now that they've been searching. As of today, I see the news outlets are reporting 33,000 plus bodies have been found. I can't imagine how long it will take those areas to recover, if they ever do. Well, I shall close and take this to the post office. I wonder how long it takes for letters to arrive home. I have one more. This will be my last letter from here, since I will probably be home by the time this one arrives, and he was. That's not correct. The letter beat him home. And I'll start over here. This will be my last letter from here, since I will probably be home by the time this one arrives, and certainly before any subsequent letters I might write. The letter did beat him home. The big news of the weekend was that Reinhold Rolf, my German friend from Fletcher, the school where they both attended out east, Fletcher came to Berlin on Saturday to see me. We tried to think of the last time we met, and we weren't sure, but we know it has not been since at least 1993, meaning at least 30 years. The weather Saturday was awful. Cold, drenching rain and wind that turned umbrellas inside out. So Reinhard and I found a coffee shop and sat there for hours catching up. No one asked us to order a second cup of coffee or suggested it was time we move on into the rain and wind. When the rain slowed a bit, we went to an Italian restaurant for dinner and continued to fill the gap of 30 plus years while talking. Reinhard is living again in SOEST, his hometown, where Lisa and I visited him that Christmas. Yes, Lisa and Jeff went to Christmas to visit Reinhard at his home in SOEST, and that was 1982. Reinhard and his wife Angie, whom I met in Budapest when they visited in 1989 or 1990, have 3 daughters, ranging in age from 27 to 22. No sons-in-law or grandchildren yet. Reinhard worked for several large businesses, and they have lived in Madrid and Barcelona in Spain, Hamburg and Milheim in Germany, Lille in France, and now SOEST, where Reinhard works as a consultant to other companies. I had the impression that he has done very well for himself, although he certainly was not boasting. He's just based on comments he made, such as they live in one of the historic houses inside the medieval city walls of SOEST. Reinhard said he came to Greenville twice. I remember bringing him here once. Well, I remember Reinhard was here twice, because it was kind of an experience having him stay at our house. But he said he went twice. He was interested in hearing about everyone and remembers the adventures of taking Lisa, who was grumpy, to East Berlin. And Lisa was grumpy. Unlike yesterday, today was a beautiful day, sunny and warmish. A German colleague who had worked with me at the UN invited me to his house for lunch with his wife, which was nice. They live in a 19th century apartment block. That reminded me very much of Budapest buildings where friends lived. Both Budapest and Berlin really boomed and grew in the late 1800s. Afterward, I went to a nice park to walk around some gardens. Not that gardens are at their best in February in Central Europe, of course. At home, our friend Elizabeth, this is Elizabeth who lives in Washington, close to where Jeff and Mary now live. At home, our friend Elizabeth, her father went with Mary yesterday to check on things at the farm. Mary is Jeff's wife. and they went to check on things at their farm in Pennsylvania. Mary sent me some photographs of things already in bloom. I hope that does not mean that the mid-Atlantic summer will come sooner and be hotter than usual. Time for bed. I'll walk this to the post office tomorrow. I wonder if it will beat me back to the U.S. or whether I will arrive first. Hope all is well in Greenville. And the letter did arrive before Jeff did. So anyway, I enjoyed his letter, and I hope that you can understand everything that I put together or pronounced, because I don't have all the pronunciation of German words real good.
Is he ever going to retire completely?
He has retired, but he keeps getting called. They called him to Germany to speak to these students, and so he was there a month. And,
Wouldn't you go if somebody paid you to go to
Well, he
someplace?
gets paid good money, but
Yes.
there's no question, but he wants to retire, but yet he takes all these jobs.
Oh, yeah, sure. He loves seeing those people that he
Yes.
once knew.
And what would you do if you retired? You would take trips. Where? You might take a trip to Germany.
Tell me his current age, or can you tell us his current age?
Let's see, Lisa's 61 and he is 63 or 4.
He's a smart person, very smart.
Well, and of course, he's my son, but he's very down to earth
Oh, yeah.
about all this. You can tell my reading. Yeah,
Yep.
he's very down to earth.
Yeah.
But he's a good letter writer too. It's hard to
Oh,
write
yeah.
a conversational letter that has information that's interesting to people like us, which it is,
Well, I hope it was interesting.
and still, family connections. So yeah, he's very accomplished.
Yeah.
Well, and if you can read his writing, that's something.
I think it's very interesting how, reflecting on his comments and observations, that he has written so well to his mother, and that you shared with us. The whole thing illustrates, I believe, the intense closeness in the diplomatic community. No matter what country you're representing in terms of diplomacy, it occurred to me as you were reading, those people stay together, even if it's on a social basis, aside from solving difficult problems or challenges or working for something. And that's what I found very interesting, how he had stayed close with those individuals in his career, and obviously will remain so for the rest of his life.
And he graduated from Ball State, you know that.
Right, and he also, I believe, you shared with me, went to Tufts University
He went to
as well.
Tufts University,
And that's where he
yes.
received his diplomatic programs
Right.
and his degree from Tufts in Boston, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep proud.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yes. And you have to remember that that's what diplomacy is all about. It's face to face, it's people knowing people, and you know that in your own experience. If you're dealing with somebody on the phone as a agent for some company or whatever problem you're having, how difficult it is, versus having your insurance agent be down the street that you run into him at the grocery store, or the guy you buy the cars from. I mean, it's much different if you know them on a personal basis. You know what they're saying, even if they're not saying it out loud. You can kind of catch the undertone and get the meaning. Whereas if somebody's talking to you on the phone that you've never met before, misunderstandings are rampant. I mean, you think you're hearing one thing and they think they're saying another thing. That's why face-to-face is still the way we would like for diplomacy to be acted out.
Well, it still amazes me that Jeff became acquainted with Reinhardt, the German that I spoke of, when they were in school together out east. And then Jeff took Lisa to Germany with him when they were both still in school. And I was so amazed that he took his sister with him, and she cried and all those things that young girls do, you know. And,
Why was she crying?
oh, why do young girls cry?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
I don't know.
Maybe things weren't going right in the diplomatic world of a late teenager.
Well, one thing that happened when he took Lisa over there with him, the car they were using needed some work. Well, Lisa was asleep in the back seat, and so they took the car to be worked on, and she was asleep during all that time. They took it up high and everything. So having Lisa with him in Europe was, I think, an experience.
Well, he obviously also was learning from his sister where there was a good Vermeer exhibit that he's going to hit after she does.
Yes, he's going over and they're very close. And they're about as different as anybody can be.
That's good. All right. Offering, I think this is the first Sunday?
Yeah.
Yes, so it's also Fish Sunday. As usual, if you can share, and don't let my story about the people who take advantage of fish. Not everybody does that. There are people there, and I've seen the people there when I've dropped stuff off. There are people who really utilize it and are decent people, and don't waste the resources that we give. So don't let my story of the people who abuse you from giving to fish. From Maine. I hope you're having a good trip in Maine. Joys and concerns. So let's do joys and concerns now. COVID, we've had personal experience here, and if you watch the rate of COVID infections in Ohio has risen to 9,000 either last week or the week before. That's a substantial rise. So COVID, even though nobody seems to be aware of it, it's still there and it's still causing trouble. Ukraine, we still have our sunflowers. Things are no better there. They're pretty much at a stalemate. They're battling over a town that has no strategic value. It's just the prestige of keeping the town. So the Ukrainians are fighting and dying to protect their town, and the Russians are killing their own troops to take the town, just so one side could be proud of having the town versus the other. Turkey, Syria, my last understanding was over 50,000 people have been killed. And they're not done yet. There was one hopeful story. It was on CBS last night. A dog was found alive and rescued after 21 days trapped in the rubble. That was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But no people recently.
Yeah.
The weather out west, California, they really need the snow. But in the California Sierras, I don't even know how many feet of snow they've had, but the snow is up to the rooftops and across the roads and everything. People have been trapped in their houses for like a week at least, and it may be another 3 or 4 days before they can get out. So I don't know if they're burning furniture, and I don't know what they're eating, their dogs and cats. I don't know. It sounds pretty dramatic. And the military, the National Guard, is like going through with shovels and bulldozers and trying to get through to people. But they said if it doesn't melt too fast, it will really do a tremendous amount to alleviate the drought that's going on. So and other places, there have been tornadoes everywhere. And then we also don't want to forget Palestine, Ohio, train wreck. And nobody really knows. I listened to them, and they talked about this at the Farm Forum meeting that I was at Saturday morning. The Agriculture Department has people there testing the soil. And the railroad is scooping up the soil and sending it away, and the water, the contaminated water, they're sending that away, except when the states like Texas, Michigan, and Illinois find out where it's coming from, then they won't take it anymore. So now it's going to sites in Ohio. One of the sites is an incinerator. So understand this, get this, they burned tank cars wrecked with vinyl chloride, which is toxic in itself and even more toxic when it's burned. They were afraid it was going to blow up, so they burned it on purpose. And that sent a fog of toxic smoke, which settled over the area. The farmers are worried about their forage. The cows are eating the grass. It's landing on the ground that pigs are laying in. I mean, I know the people are worried about their kids. So they've scooped all that dirt up, and what are they going to do with it?
Burn it.
They're going to send it to an incinerator in Ohio and burn it again. So people are worried that they just found out that they created a smoke, and this incinerator has been cited like multiple times for not having a high enough temperature to actually incinerate what they're burning. They're just getting paid to basically turn it into smoke and send it out over the population again. So things have not really gotten any better, and I want to say I trust science, but sometimes science doesn't know the answers. Science does the best they can, but sometimes the best is not good enough. So, and I don't know, I haven't seen anybody say what the final solution would be other than put it in a plastic barrel and just bury the barrel and not let it out. But, all right, do we have any other choices?
Another train derailment last night in Springfield.
Oh yes, the New Madison girls basketball is doing, and the boys are both winning. So, and that's something to be proud of, and something for a small town, that's an important thing. So.
Is the season over now?
Huh?
Is the season
Oh no, girls state finals, boys are regional finals.
So a couple more weeks.
Yeah, a couple more weeks.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully everybody's healthy. Dolly's in Maine. I haven't heard from anybody else, I don't think. So if you have something, let me know. All right. I haven't even been lighting candles for all these, so we'll light one candle.
Light them and turn them out.
Yeah, not light them and turn them out. We'll light a candle for those things that we cannot share, that we hold deep in our hearts, cares, joys, concerns. We are with you if you need the help or need the community. We stand as your community. Okay, our closing hymn is 291. Die Gedanken sind frei. This is basically a German folk song that they've put English words to. And Roberta has picked this as it goes with our Berlin and German Sunday. side, of course, is the note at the bottom. I think it might have something to do with the Berlin Wall. My thoughts are as free as wind o'er the ocean, and no one can see their form or their motion. No hunter can find them, no trap ever bind them. My lips may be still, but I think what I will. A good anthem for Unitarian Universalists. Okay, let me do, we're a little bit over, but not too much. Let me show you this one. This is different ways that people escaped the Berlin Wall.
The East German soldier Wolfgang Engels may have helped to build the wall, but 2 years later, he had enough of it. In April 1963, he stole a parked armored personnel carrier and left the military base. It wasn't the best laid plan. He simply planned to go directly through the wall with the tank. A few hundred meters from the border, he leaned out of the vehicle and offered bystanders a ride to the west, but no one joined him. Engels then put his foot down and launched at full speed the tank into the concrete barrier. He didn't break cleanly through, and dramatically the exit door was still on the east side. He got out and climbed over the bonnet, but a guard who had arrived at the scene shot him at close range. Although he had been shot, he still managed to climb the wall, but got stuck on the barbed wire, and the guard shot him again in the back. Finally, a West Berlin border guard who had witnessed the escape attempt returned fire to the east, buying Engels some time, but the fugitive lost consciousness on the wall. During the exchange of fire, some West Berliners rushed from a nearby pub and pulled Engels down to safety. If someone was caught making a violation of the borderline, border men were allowed to shoot them down without orders. How did it come to this? After the defeat of the Nazi regime in 1945, Germany was put under the control of the Allied forces with the US, British, French, and Soviets each having their own zones of occupation. The Cold War incited a strong flow of emigration from the east to the west, so much so that in 1961, East Germany's communist leaders decided that a wall should be built around West Berlin to prevent their citizens fleeing to the west, and to prevent the intrusion of possible agents and spies. The people living in the east were confined without the possibility of crossing the border. The desperation inspired hundreds of escape attempts, not all successful, but some absolutely creative. Harry Dieterle was a train engineer about to be transferred to a labor and re-education camp after refusing to comply to state programs. 4 months after the construction of the wall, he saw his opening, literally, in a train crossing to West Berlin scheduled for permanent closure. There was no time to waste. He gathered his family and some friends on the train during his shift, just 5 days before the dismantling of the tracks. When Dieterle approached the last station, instead of slowing down to stop, he opened up the throttle and disconnected the safety brake so that no one could stop the train. There were 32 people on that train, including 7 passengers who didn't realize what they had gotten into. The guards, also caught by surprise, didn't fire a single shot. The runaway train smashed full speed into the barrier protecting the border and ended its journey in the West Berlin district of Spandau. Horst Klein was a trapeze artist living in East Berlin who was banned from performing for his anti-communist ideas. He noticed a cable spanning across the Berlin Wall and decided to flee, doing what he did best. During a cold winter night of 1962, he climbed an electric utility pole, reached a high-voltage cable, and started moving hand over hand over the wall. At some point, his arms became too tired, and he tried to use his legs too. Dangling a perilous 18 meters above the guards patrolling the area, Klein was far from safety, yet outside the range of the searchlights. Unfortunately, his hands numbed in the cold, and he lost his grip, falling down. Klein broke both of his arms in the fall, but luckily, he landed just a few feet over the western side of the wall. 21-year-old Ingo Bethke dreamed of seeing the world,
but his dream could never become a reality as long as he was trapped in East Germany. Ingo had become familiar with the Elbe River while serving as a border guard and decided the Elbe would be his path to freedom. One night in 1975, he went to a dimly lit area by the river, but escape would not be easy. To reach the bank, Ingo needed to pass through a heavy metal fence with tripwires that activated floodlights when touched. Next was the barbed wire barrier, and behind that, a strip dotted with mines. When he finally reached the riverbank, he blew up an air mattress and silently paddled to the other side. 8 years later, Holger Bethke, Ingo's brother, also decided to flee, but the Elbe River had been even more heavily fortified. He had to choose another way. For weeks, Holger and a friend prepared for the escape by working out and practicing archery. In March 1983, the two dressed as electricians entered the chosen building where they hid in the attic. Under the cover of darkness, Holger shot a nylon line over the wall using a bow and arrow. However, with only 3 arrows, he missed the first 2 shots. He finally sent the last arrow over the border and beyond the opposite house, and tied his end around a chimney. Ingo was waiting on the other side with the nylon line, retrieved a steel cable over the wall, and fastened it to his car. He then drove a few meters forward to pull the cable taut. With the line prepared, Holger launched himself down the track, using the rope as a zip line, hanging onto an iron pulley. Moments from freedom, Holger realized the line wasn't steep enough, and he came to a stop before the end of the line. Stranded on the cable, there was no going back. He had to move forward. He used his hands to push himself forward and found a balcony just below it, where he jumped into West Berlin. Surveillance systems improved from year to year, and by 1989, escape was almost impossible. But the Bethke brothers had a third sibling still in the East, and they decided to risk everything to bring him over the border. They bought 2 ultralight planes and modified them with more powerful engines to carry 2 people instead of 1. Their plan, pretend to be Russian pilots, and to make things seem more believable, they glued 2 red stars under the wings of the ultralights. Dressed in fake Russian uniforms, they took off at dawn, heading towards Trek Tower Park, where their brother was waiting in East Germany. Flying over the border, the brothers had waged that nobody would dare to shoot down an identified object during the Cold War, and they retrieved Egbert and flew to the west without raising any suspicion. When they took off, Egbert was haunted by a thought that all people who cross the border as refugees have, leaving behind a whole life, your city, your people, and not knowing you'll ever be able to meet them again.
Over 146 people were killed trying to cross the Berlin Wall. Over 146. Some people say 150, so the numbers are kind of... They crossed through tunnels. In the museums in Berlin, there are Volkswagens with hollowed out floors where people could lay underneath the seats and the floorboards. The German guards, the East German guards, got wise to most of these as time went along, so they had to... But the Germans are pretty inventive people, as you can see by these examples here. There was no end to the innovative ways they tried to escape. Okay, Hands Touching Hands by Matt Alspaugh. I invite you to rise in spirit and join hands with your neighbors, metaphorically. Hands touch hands. These hands you now hold once held others' hands. Hand by hand we touch those who are here with us and those who are no longer with us. And hand over hand, we touch all humanity. Let our hands touching hands remind us they are no longer with us, but they are in us. They touched us, they are in our memories, they are in our stories, they are the way we move through the world. Let us go into the world and joyfully carry them with us in our hearts. Okay. That ends our service. The postlude. What are we doing for postlude?
I was planning to.
Okay. And this last picture, there is a little village inside the Berlin Wall, but outside Berlin proper, called Lubars. I had pictures of it, but I couldn't find them. But Lubars is actually in the country, and in the middle of the country, there's a Berlin Wall with the watchtowers and the whole works. but people like me who grew up in the country could still go out to Lou bars to see the sheep, see the cattle, see the people milking their cattle, and have a little bit of being in the country again. So. There is real coffee this time, and there are donuts, and I think somebody brought some other stuff in, so have a nice lunch. Enjoy the spring, and please wear your mask, or at least wash your hands, be careful.
Thank you very much.